What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of nftwins. Today, we're talking about sustainable aviation fuel costs, flying on French fry oil.
So they're the biggest customer of McDonald's or what?
You might think that, but no, my man, they got a lot of things. Why is this so relevant? Well, doesn't everyone want to fly guilt-free?
But do they? To be honest, right now, the only thing I care about is a cheap flight and it should be direct. And yeah, food. I don't even care about the food on the airplane because to be honest, I just have my backpack full of snacks and just water.
Because you are what people call here in Spain, a tacaño. A cheapskate. A cheapskate. That's what it is. Proud. This guy is fucking proud of it. Me too. I'm not gonna lie to you guys.
I'll call myself as an efficient flyer. All right, Mike. So tell me, what is SAF and what is actually the impact on the aviation industry and why did it come out of nowhere?
Okay, a few things. So SAF is Sustainable Aviation Fuel, which is basically made from cooking oil, agricultural waste, and synthetic chemistry, like power to liquid, basically.
Why would they even come up with this?
So, well, I think this is the whole save the planet movement, end of the day. And it's one of the things, it's one of the movements, especially of governments, trying to hit the targets in terms of, hey, we want to be eco-friendlier, etc. So we need to find alternative fuels.
My question is, so it was basically created by a government or is it actually an industry that is created by new regulations?
Well, that's something we're going to go later in, right? The opportunity might be in new regulations. But, well, actually, probably the industry is based on new regulation because at the end of the day, it's an alternative fuel. So what the point of this is that there's tons already of airplanes and they have running engines. These engines run, or the combustion engines, at the end of the day, right? So they run on fuel. So they came up with a eco-friendly fuel that they can use in the same airplanes. So it's like in Germany, like the E10, anything that's biofuel basically. So you don't have to change all the cars because that's a pain in the ass. People might not do it, etc. So just use the same system, just a different kind of fuel.
Okay. I first want to set a little bit the stage because I think it's like, why are we talking about this in general? Because I want to first of all say that in the aviation industry, roughly 30% of all the costs are actually fuel costs. And then also roughly each airline makes roughly $6 profit on each passenger.
Okay,
and this is relevant because now we're going to talk about the actual cost of this SAF. Because like if you think about if you have the same cost, that would be perfect.
So you're talking about the airline side. I want to talk about the business opportunity side for those actually who are creating this biofuel, which is fucking fascinating and super interesting in my regards. Okay, Lucas, just break down the cost and everything, please.
All right. I already broke down the cost. Like basically most of it is, for this podcast, the most important part is anyways that 30% of the cost is fuel itself. Also, another point that I want to point out that the SAF reduces the CO2 life cycle by 50 to 80%. So emissions compared to fuel by like normal fossil jet fuel.
Yeah, so 50 to 80%, which is fantastic. And they're not even using that much, right?
But this is considered like not just the burning part, but also the production, refining, and transport. So they're calling it over the entire life cycle, right?
Okay, but this is not a green podcast. We're talking about why is this fucking fascinating to me. Well, this is one of the
why it might be stupid.
Okay, stupid and another thing. And who's going to pay for it at the end of the day? Look,
that's the point.
First of the thing, conventional, like let's put it this way, it's crazy expensive. It's I think 3 to 5 times more expensive than regular, like while they use kerosene.
Yeah,
crazy expensive in that part. So people obviously, there's only, if you are a business in airline, you're not gonna buy this fuel unless it's mandatory because it's gonna cut in the margins. So what are they doing? They're trying to minimize this as much as possible. Second, they're gonna find a way to cover the costs. How are they gonna do that, Lucas?
Well, of course, we have to pay it. In the end, the consumer has to pay it or they get subsidies by the government. But another point is, just to give an overview, right now, last year, 2024, it was 0.53% of all jet fuel that's been used was actually the SAF.
That's not much.
It's really nothing. Like we're coming now in a situation when, especially when regulation push it towards to be more green, and then the companies are pushed towards basically charging a green fee. Like imagine this way. I want to give you a quick example, okay? Because right now you have roughly 3% margins. Now, if you increase, if regulations say, for example, you need to have by 2030 10%, 10% SAF fuel. Okay, Mark, that would basically double the price of fuel of 29 billion to 58 billion. That wipes almost all of today's profits of 30 billion. So there would be only 2 billion profits in the entire industry if every airline would going to 10% of the SAF fuel.
Well, I also want to talk about it. One thing that just reminds me of, look, this is another thing. This is only a mandate currently in the EU. So only 2%, like it's a mandate, is they need to use 2% of these. That means all the airlines based on in the EU need to put on 2%. By 2030, it's supposed to be 6%.
Yeah.
In the US, there's no mandate for this.
Of course. And
but they're pushing
Emirates,
subsidies
neither.
and check credits. Exactly. Asia also, well, Japan and Singapore are looking into research, etc. But like, let's say Etihad and all the Arab countries, the airlines are not going to do that. They have oil. They're not going to fucking biofuel the shit out of this. Why would they? So it's one of the things that will definitely impact the market in terms of how competitive are these airlines going to be and how hard do they actually want to make it for themselves? Like the EU, why are they crippling their own industry in that regard?
This also is one of the questions that came up for me, because in the event, think about you're in a situation where out of a sudden you have to put in, let's say, 5 or 6%, which eats a lot of your margins. And then how can you roll over these costs to the end consumer? Because you can't say, well, it's because we're going green, and everybody say, wow, it's like so much more like green. Like you got basically only going green, but then you look at the percentages, only like 4% or 6% is actually of the fuel that you're using is green, which is a ridiculous amount, but it makes a huge impact.
Well,
on
I'm
the
sure
margins.
there are some tree huggers that love that shit. They're like, hell yeah, fuck yeah, I'm all the way green.
Yeah, but it's again, that's false advertisement, because in the end they're saying yes, it's super green,
it's double, twice as
super
green
because
than
that
the
also
other ones.
can hurt then the reputation of the company itself, because they're like stuck. They need to increase prices or roll them over at the same time. Which is like a interesting situation that is coming up. But now, Mark, let's focus on the business side of these companies. Why, if for example, legislation changes, makes it an awesome opportunity for starting a business? Because why is that the case?
So look, I mean, we already talked about it. This industry is one of these legislation changes. So because of legislation changes, there are new opportunities, because now there is a 100%, you know, that there's going to be a need for your product. So product market fit is, you know, already that the product is required. Also, by law, people need to buy this. If you are the only one producing it, or you're one of the few, the demand is there. You don't even have to fight it. You don't have to create it. You don't even need to advertise it. Is if you have a good product, they will come to you because they have to buy it from you. There's also another topic I think we'll talk about next week. It's about age verification. There's a new legislation coming out in a few states in the US as well as in Europe and some countries, which is fascinating, which is a great opportunity.
Wild. Just guys, you're gonna be mind blown by just how much money some of these companies make by age verification. Wild thing. Wild stuff.
It's for sure fucking crazy. Anyways, coming back to that. So you have the opportunity because now you don't even need to look for the demand. It's already there. And it will also increase. Don't get me wrong. There can be also downsides that the regulation says it's not mandatory anymore. But you see obviously a trend line. Like you already have to 2030. You know already that the demand is going to scale up at least to 6% in the EU and maybe up to 10. I don't know. Depends on what they're cooking, but
in general. But at the same time, as these companies, you also have to make, because I was thinking, yes, they're done by used oil, right? What is it called? Cooking oil.
Yeah.
Think about it. What if all the other regulations reduce also the waste of cooking oil? Of used cooking oil, right? Because you can't use normal cooking oil because they kind of have to be greenish. So isn't there a limitation then? Because there is right now, one of the biggest problems is the amount of the production.
Well, it's a waste, right? End of the day, they're using agricultural waste as well. So I'm guessing they're going directly to, hopefully, they are actually green and not just buying up the rest of the supply.
That's also one of the things when legislation is trying to make something good. For example, now it's a little bit off topic. No, it's like, for example, here in Barcelona, for example, regulation about rent control, right? So they said long-term rental control, you have to have this amount and you can't increase for X amount. And so what they're doing right now is in the end it's a good idea, but then execution, all the homeowners just rent out the apartments for 11 months or 11 months 20 days, whatever, and then they can just increase prices afterwards, which makes it the legislation useless.
Well, no, you're right. Yeah.
So that's
Obviously,
also one of
no,
these
no.
things that we have to check out how this is going to develop with the fuel, because in the end the other one is a business, profitable or for profit business. So they're also trying to find ways how to potentially use this.
I was thinking about, I had in my head an example of when during the colonization of India, that the British set out because they had a big problem with all the snakes, etc. and
Cobras, I think, right?
Cobras. So they said, like, look, guys, if you give me a head of a snake, I'll give you whatever. You give you I don't know, 1 pound, whatever it was, end of the day. So they thought, okay, now all the natives are going, well, the Indians there are gonna fucking kill the snakes and bring them the heads, get the money. But end of the day, what turned out to be that now the natives were incentivized to breed the cobras because it's super cheap, and then kill them and then bring them over. At some point, obviously, the fucking British found out, and then they were like, "Fuck, we're not gonna do this. Fuck this shit. We can't take this bounty, this headhunting anymore. So we're gonna quit this." And then what obviously all the farmers do, they release the cobras into the wild. So they had more cobras at the end of the day because the incentive structure was so perverted that didn't make sense for them. So this is one of the things that you got to be careful with, these kind of incentives and how you structure a legislation at the end of the day.
Overall, I would say though it's amazing that in industries where you think there could not be any disruption, especially like fuel or like jet fuels, etc. But then you see, legislation comes up, and out of a sudden new players pop up, because in the end, it makes a huge difference. This might be in age verification, we're going to talk about next week, or other industry where just legislation changes create opportunities for new businesses. Especially, this one needs a lot of capex, so that's ridiculous, because like you need refineries, etc. So it's like for big players, but still, it's quite interesting to see.
No. All right. It's one of the things I think there will be more and more coming like this. And the question is, I don't even know who creates this SAF and every day. It'll be really, really interesting to find out, because
All right, let's see who creates SAF. Here we go, ladies and gents.
While you look this up, I also want to talk about the costs. Look, actually, Lucas already mentioned this. Some of the costs are going to be rolled over to the user, but they're also actually asking for subsidies, especially in Europe, because they have this mandate. So they're asking government to pay for it, which at the end of the day you pay for as a taxpayer then, and which kind of makes it shit. Because do you want to pay for someone else's vacation? Good question.
So, all right, Mark, I got we got the traditional players. So we got here Chevron, ExxonMobil, Shell, BP, Neste, not Neste. I didn't know that either.
Oh, so they're already big gas companies.
Yeah, exactly.
They have already the infrastructure, and they're just additionally just putting something. Well, makes sense.
One of the biggest, the world's biggest SAF producer today is Neste, Finland, and they use cooking oil and animal fats.
Wild. So didn't expect that.
Yeah.
Neste
is basically the Apple of SAF. First mover, premium margins, everyone else playing the catch up. No, but that's the thing. It's like, for me, super interesting, especially to see how it's going to develop over the next few years. But yeah, guys, let us know in the comment section what you think about this. And of course, catch you next one.
Cheers.